right. So I am sitting here with three radiant, lovely women who joined me for my first international retreat in Costa Rica in January of 2025. And I invited them on to the Feminine Frequency today to share about their insights, their takeaways, and really to share some wisdom and inspiration with our listeners to show them what's possible when it comes to connecting with your feminine radiance and aliveness through a retreat experience. Because I know that going on a retreat is not actually that common. I know that a lot of women want to go on retreats and they want to travel and they want to do cool things, but there's a lot of things that kind of keep us in our comfort zone. And it is a very, I would say, transformational experience when we lean into something new and something different. So we're going to share just the real, the authentic behind the scenes from each of these incredible women, what their experience was like, so that everyone can hear what would it be like to actually go on a embodiment retreat. So I'm going to start with Jessica. I'll have you introduce yourself first, love.
Hi, I'm Jessica Heckel, and thank you so much for having me. It's great to see all you lovely ladies. I'm an investment strategist for a wealth management firm, and I just moved from Houston, Texas to Washington, D.C. within the last week.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I'm going to ask you one more question in these introductions. I'd love for you to share what was your intention for joining the Radiance Retreat?
That's a great question. So you are my coach, and you had mentioned it to me in one of our private client sessions, and I just try to be open to things, like surrender to what comes to me and think about the invitations that come. And it just seemed like something that would be aligned if I was able to take the time off from work, and I was able to. I just thought that it would be a good experience, which it ended up being amazing.
Yeah, great. Well, we'll dive into some of the details, but thanks for sharing. All right, and Blanca.
My name is Blanca. I am a spiritual life coach and facilitator, and I am from Boston, Massachusetts. My intention going into the retreat, and I was thinking about this because I signed up for it and then I backed out, and then I went. A couple months later, it took me a couple months, but I think for me was taking the time to do some like deeper healing for just like stuff that I was going through in my life at that time, and to connect with sisterhood. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love that you shared that you had that experience of saying yes and then you
Oh
pulled
yeah.
out
It was so
back.
real. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about that piece of like saying yes and then pulling out what came up for you.
So Costa Rica has always called me, and I love that it was you because I've been in other containers with you. And so it was like with someone that I trusted, Stephanie as well. I met her in another one of your programs. And so I was like, okay, like this is so cool. It's, two women that I love working with. And I signed up. That was July that you announced it, right?
Mhm.
And I think a month later, I was just like, no, like, I don't know what's going to be going on in my life in January. Like, when it comes to like traveling and stuff, I'm so spontaneous that I don't know, maybe it's like something I have with like planning so far ahead too. And then in November, I experienced a miscarriage. And I remember that day, it was a Monday, Tuesday on the 11th, you had something online. And I went on because I felt like I needed community and women, especially. There's something so special about letting yourself be seen in a community of women, especially. I'm usually the one to like hold space and, kind of be there for everybody and not really have anyone for me. After that, I was just like, I get to go to this. And so like that next day, I was like, okay, I'm coming, and I don't know, how that's going to happen, but I'm there and it happened. And I'm so grateful that I chose to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to talk more about the
Yeah, we'll get deeper
sisterhood
in that.
aspect of it. But thank
Mhm.
you for even just want to pause and say thank you for your authenticity and
Yeah,
sharing vulnerability of like, I was going through something really hard and I knew that being around community would be helpful. And so you showed up to an online, I think it was an 11/11 workshop that I did.
11.
Yeah. And then you're like, okay, I feel like this is the space that I'm meant to be in. And you
Mhm.
trusted that
Mhm.
instead of like the fear of, I don't know what's going to be happening in the future, which
Yeah.
is usually fear based. Like you
Yeah.
listen to that inner knowing of, okay, I actually know I'm really meant to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Okay. And Morgan.
I'm Morgan. I live in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. I'm a former educator turned entrepreneur. So I am a life coach for women as well as a life insurance broker. And my intention for joining the Radiance Retreat was really just to decompress. I had had another business and the company, which is what afforded me the opportunity to leave my salaried position as an educator. And I guess a little over a year before the retreat, the company had folded and I lost my business. And I realized that I had just been thinking that I was managing things okay, but really was like living in a state of fight or flight as a single mom who had left my career for this business to then have it sort of crumble. So for me, the retreat was really an opportunity to completely unplug and reset and give myself some of the attention that I hadn't been able to really give myself over the last year or so.
Beautiful. I love that intention. And I'll give a little spoiler alert because as part of the retreat, every day we have a theme. It's a very intentional journey that we go on. And the first day we arrived and the first day that we're together is really about that unplugging. It's about that rest and rejuvenation and like unhooking from computer and responsibility and you're a single mom. It's like there's a lot going on. And so really having that time to land and let your body arrive there and not just like jump into this whole, I don't know, like when you have this agenda where you're back to back to back with things, like that's not what this retreat is. If you want that type of travel experience, great. That's not what the Radiance Retreat is, but we also do some really deep work there as well. So we'll move into our second question here, which is what are one or two of your most impactful moments or your favorite memories from the retreat?
One of the like most profound experiences that I had there was uh, my cycle was gonna start, and then it started a few days before, but it was like a couple days longer, and like to me it was really weird. It was right before as I arrived to Costa Rica, and so I kept questioning like, what's going on? Like, why is this happening? And I kind of like tucked it in the back of my head because I was like, let me just enjoy right now. And after one of the embodiment sessions that we had down at the remind me the name again.
Yeah, it's the yoga shala
Yes.
area.
I remember we laid down and we were just in our bodies, like after that experience. And then it clicked. Like the question came up in my mind and it was like, why, you know, why did, why was that happening with my body? After the womb session that I had with Stephanie.
Mhm.
And in that moment, my womb, my heart, my mind all connected. And my womb was like, I'm grieving what you didn't. So it was just like, it was so profound. Like it just honestly opened, like cracked my heart wide open. You have a video of that moment. And it just, every time I like come across it, I just remember exactly what it was that I was going through in that moment. And it's so like profound for me.
Thank you for sharing that. And this is what happens when we create spaciousness to allow whatever healing is meant to happen. Like we can have an intention going into a retreat, we can have an intention going into any experience. And we also trust the process that whatever insight your body and your intuition is meant to give you is going to be revealed in the experience. And what happens when our bodies feel safe, when we create the space to get out of our mind and intentionally drop into the body, there's information that it gives us. And what I heard is that your womb was like, oh, you haven't taken time to process your
Mhm.
marriage. You haven't taken time to really grieve and really feel
Yeah.
that. And so being in that space, in that setting, you had that opportunity to release that and to move that emotion, which
Yeah.
is what to me healing is. It's like
Mhm.
things that we're holding on to that we didn't even know we were holding on to sometimes. And
Yeah.
we don't need to cognitively process it all the time. Like that experience didn't come through coaching. That experience
Exactly.
came through your
Bodily.
body's wisdom.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then just another one is after the morning yoga. That was like also a very big breakthrough for me because I remember laying on the mat and we were just, the music was playing and everything was silent. You know, nature was all around us. It was so beautiful. I always just close my eyes and think back to the shala. And I just remember like hearing, let yourself be seen. Like, it's
Mm.
okay. You're safe. Because I think I have this like sisterhood wound that just like always kind of made me put my guard up and not let myself be seen for who I really am or whatever, you know, what I do. And so it was just like, you're safe. Like, it's okay. Like, you know, these women are also here to be seen and to be heard. And it was just an amazing experience getting to share that with everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a powerful space to be in, to
Mhm.
let yourself be witnessed and let other people in instead of having that
Yeah.
guard up. And that happened even on day one for you. So you were
Hmm.
able to open up to receive and create really beautiful connections.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Love watching you connecting with all the ladies. Yeah. Okay. Who would like to share next?
I could share a couple things. One thing I want to start off by saying is that oftentimes, if I have not done a retreat like this, especially just for women, but oftentimes, if I do some kind of retreat, I get a private room. But this time I had a roommate and I just felt like it was like a divinely inspired connection. And it was just so easy to talk to her. And I realized how important having a connection with other women is. I'm in a very, very male dominated environment, and so this was something that was just so amazing, not just with her but with all of the women on the retreat. And there were a lot of nights where like, okay, we have to go to bed early, you know, or like we have to go to bed now, or we have to get up early. And then the last night of the retreat, we just stayed up really late talking. And it was just so much fun to have girl talk and to share beauty products and talk about beauty products. And it was just something I hadn't had in so long. And so it just felt so amazing to have that. There was also another time in one of the sessions that we did where a lot of, you know, a lot of it was about expressing yourself authentically. And a lot of the women were kind of dancing and focused on movement. And I just had a lot of sort of rage that had built up, and I was like screaming into the jungle in the yoga shala. And it was just one of those things where I felt like I could finally be myself and do things without judgment and just let go. It almost felt like years of just all of this programming or conditioning or emotions that had been stored, and I was just able to kind of release it over the course of the retreat. But I especially remember that one, and then someone even made a comment afterward when they were like, you go.
I got chills when you were talking about that moment, and I have it like imprinted in my mind. You standing at the edge of the shala, looking out into the jungle, and just like letting it rip. And it gave so much permission. We were in like a wild woman experience, and it gave so much permission for other people to use sound. And that's something that we as women often will keep our voices quiet. We won't make noise. We don't want it to sound weird or different, or we don't want to sound crazy or bitchy or whatever. So having a space where we can really use the technology of our bodies and use this release process of letting go of sound without having this like, oh, what are people going to think about that? And they're going to think I'm crazy, but actually just letting the energy flow and then being the permission for others. And I really loved your two shares, because the first one, like having that experience with your roommate, Mackenzie, I was actually one night next door. I was talking to Steph, our support facilitator, and you guys were in the room next door, and we could just hear you giggling. Like we couldn't even hear what you were saying, but they were having like a late night giggle fest. And it made me so happy to just hear laughter. And that was actually a really big part of what I enjoyed about the retreat, whether it was like at dinner or at lunch or on the bus or just like seeing women connect by the pool. There was so much laughter that happened. And I think that we do forget that aspect of joy that naturally is inside of us when we get out of the constructs of like this serious structured life that we've all created as adults, these responsible beings, right? And then we forget like, oh, I actually get to have fun, and like it can be fun to connect with other women. So that was one of my favorite memories too, just like hearing you ladies laugh it up in there.
Yeah, I'll just add quickly, even though I mentioned the screaming. Yeah, there was so much laughter. And I remember you mentioning on the bus too that Lindsay and I were the gigglers.
Uh-huh.
And so it's just so much fun for me to laugh, even if it's like something that seems like nonsense or whatever. But yeah, I just love that. It just felt like there was a lot of joy.
And even in that share, it's like everyone brings their own medicine. Like the giggles are medicine, the deep shares and the tears are medicine, the vulnerability that women brought forward and just sharing different stories and different aspects of their life were medicine. And I'll share one of my favorite experiences was sitting at the dinner table, and we would have really intentional group conversations where it wasn't just surface level, where we had, an invitation for whoever wanted to share. And it was such a great way to get to know everyone, not in like a structured formal setting where it had to be a workshop or a facilitated thing. It was just like, we're all women sitting around together eating really good food in this beautiful place. And now we get to have these epic conversations and like really get to know each other. I feel like that's something that I always crave is deep, meaningful conversations and
Mhm.
really getting to know people. So that was one of my favorite moments and experiences. Morgan, did you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I echo Jessica in that like I feel like my roommate was divinely chosen for me. I felt like I left the retreat with 100% like a new best friend, even though she lives halfway across the country. So much so that I have decided to join the Radiance Retreat again this year. And because that experience was so wonderful, chose to do a shared room again, even though a single room would have been an option, because I feel like that added such value to the trip to be able to share space and really get to know someone. I mean, I got to know lots of women on a deeper level, but to have that sort of one-on-one giggle time, like you said, Jess, that was really special. And I think one of the things that I really took away from the retreat and enjoyed was, I've done a lot of work with Amy through one-on-one coaching and group coaching and different workshops. But getting to experience the embodiment work in person, and for me, what I realized through that work is that the healing aspect of doing that work through embodiment felt so much lighter and less heavy than like constant like talk therapy or attending a retreat where like it was just talk, and I left and I felt really drained. In this case, I feel like I came home from this experience lighter, more ready and focused to do, the things that I need to do, as opposed to feeling like I needed a vacation from a vacation. And that was really special for me.
Amazing. I remember when you were booking the retreat, you were like, I have a lot of travel for work. Like, I'm wondering if adding more travel will be an issue for me. I already have like a packed schedule. And that was something that I really leaned in with you on was like, I hear you. And you get to decide what's right for you. And the intention for the Radiance Retreat is that you feel so nourished and so deeply connected to yourself, and that this is a space for you to refill your cup, to enliven your soul, to come back home to yourself. Like, this is not an experience that's designed to, you know, be this draining. Not that any experience is designed that way, but it often ends up being that way. Jess, I think you went on another retreat afterwards that there was like a lot of travel and it was a totally different experience. But yeah, do you want to share anything? You don't have to share about the specific retreat, but any contrast?
Yeah, I've done a few different meditation retreats, and I did a silent meditation retreat in November of 2024. And it was just, I think that the silence part was very cool, but it was also just, there wasn't any kind of connection with other people, and especially not like a sisterhood connection either. And I think that one thing to your point is that there was a lot of downtime that was in there where we were able to get massages. I had a womb clearing with Stephanie as well. So it felt like there was this good balance. It felt like there was just a lot of balance in general. And so I didn't really see that in other retreats where it's like, oh, you get up and you have to be there at 7 a.m. and then you're done at 10 p.m. and then you have to do it the next day all over again.
Yeah, Thank you for sharing that. I've been on many retreats as well, and I've really been an observer of what feels good for me. And I like to have a mixture of both, of having that downtime and having variety while also having a structure. So it's not just this like open ended thing and feels chaotic. So having that intentionality of the, let's say, masculine structure of, okay, we have these specific workshops, we're doing this work together, and then there's time for adventure, there's time for relaxation, there's time for solo time, there's time for sister time. Like it's all the things, which I'm glad that you shared that. And this coming year in 2026, we actually added one extra day to the retreat. So we're going to have even more spaciousness and a couple of other really awesome adventures and awesome workshops that we're going to be adding into the experience that I'm excited about. Okay, so for our next question, specifically because this is a feminine embodiment retreat and obviously the theme was radiance, I'd love to hear from you ladies. What aspects of your feminine energy do you feel got activated or that you're able to connect with more through this experience? It could be things like your sensuality or intuitive gifts or emotional, like connecting more with your emotions in certain ways, sisterhood, all the things. You ladies know what it is. I just wanted to give some examples. What do you feel were some of the aspects that came online for you or that you got to explore more on the retreat?
I think one of my biggest takeaways from attending the retreat and sort of what I came home with was choosing to operate from love and not fear. And, I think that was a theme that was sort of woven throughout the retreat for me, and my reflections was like all of the resistance that I feel in certain areas in my life, which, right, like maybe relationships and maybe work and right, but like across those spectrums, they're all rooted in fear, and that I get to choose love instead. And so even now, almost 6 months later, when I feel resistance or fear come up, I remind myself like, and I ask myself the question, like, what would love do? And sort of start from there.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that insight. It's one of my favorite teachings from A Course in Miracles, which is a metaphysical text. And I feel like it's such a great, simple reminder because sometimes we can get so complicated with personal development and with mindset work and all this stuff. But it's like, to me, what would love do reminds me, like, come back to your heart. Like, let's get out of the mind, which is where the fear happens. We also feel fear in our body. So it's not that fear doesn't happen in our body, but it's usually originated from a fearful thought or fearful idea or belief. And if we can use the practices to help us to tap back into our heart, then we can tune into what is my truth? What would love do in this situation, in a relationship, in this career decision, in the way that I take care of myself? Thank you for bringing that here. I love that. Yeah.
I
Who would
can,
like to share next? Blanca.
yeah, definitely allowing myself to feel my emotions. I think that when we do, when we are especially in this work that we do emotional intelligence, spiritual work, mindset work, it's very easy for us to like bypass our own experiences and emotions. And so I think for me at the retreat, it was like a time for me to slow down and really experience, all of the emotions that I had kind of been like, okay, well, yeah, this happened, because I'm so rooted in like, okay, everything happens for a reason. So it's almost like I spiritually bypass my experiences because I'm like, well, there's a greater, like reasoning for this. But then it's like with something so deep and, for me, it was really sitting with the emotions and like processing them and allowing myself like holding space for those to come through and just like really experience them.
Yeah. And again, the differentiation there is we can go into the intellectualizing and
Yeah.
even the bypassing happens in the mind, which
Hmm.
those are good skills to have. There's a lot of benefit to it of being able to choose a positive thought, right? Or
Yeah.
to not get super bogged down and always be in the feels. And there needs to be a balance of that, of the way that we actually process
Yeah.
emotions effectively and release them is through the body,
Hmm.
through through tears, through screaming, through stomping, through all these different expressions that we can have. And if we're just processing them in the mind or making sense of them in a different way so it doesn't feel so heavy,
Yeah.
we're not actually doing that deeper work that creates those frequency and energetic shifts that last, in my experience.
No, I agree 100%. But I feel like at the retreat is when I really saw that. I was like, wait, this happened. And it's like the first day that I had my miscarriage, I was like, of course I grieved. And then the next day it was like back to work, like back to whatever I had to do. And so thinking back, I was just like, wow, like I really didn't allow myself to feel these heavy, very heavy emotions. So once I was there, I definitely took advantage of that. And it just came so naturally, like during the embodiment, during the workshops, like just it's like something in my body like would just click and it was like, okay, there the tears or whatever it was. It just like really activated a lot of feminine healing for me.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Okay. Jess, would you like to share?
Yes, I can definitely relate to what both Morgan and Blanca have said. For me, I think there are a couple of big things. One is the sensuality part. I grew up in a very conservative, religious household, and I didn't realize how much of that sort of conditioning I had still held on to. And so I felt like I had learned to let a lot of that go during the retreat and to just sort of, I guess, be my authentic self and embrace that part of me. And I think the other part that has been extremely helpful because I have a demanding job that is male dominated is kind of going back to learning to speak my truth and learning to embody the divine feminine, even if that looks very different than what I'm seeing around me because I am around a bunch of men. And so I can spend time doing things that I know will be additive for my career, even if it doesn't seem like it. So meditation and morning movement and tapping and things like that, I've started doing more of that instead of just focusing on work and being in my head all the time. And I've found that being able to trust myself more and rely on faith and just knowing that I'm always protected, even though it sounds woo woo and people I work with would not understand. It's actually helped me to be a lot more effective than just like paying attention all the time and knowing a bunch of numbers and trying to act like my male counterparts because I'm not. And so that's what can set me apart and help me to do so much better is just leaning into that authenticity, leaning into the feminine. And so there are times I've surprised myself with how much I've spoken up where I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that to someone who's so high up and but then I'm also like, you know what, own it. Like if people don't want to hear it, then I can go somewhere else. And so it's like this feminine confidence, let's call it, that I feel like I have so much more of.
Yeah, so beautiful. And, we are taught a lot, we have a lot of misconceptions around like doing these practices are unproductive or they don't connect to our work, that they're separate or that they take away from being productive and successful. And what I'm hearing that you're realizing it and that you've been experiencing is that actually bringing these aspects of yourself online and bringing them to the workplace is helping you to stand out more. And it is uncomfortable and it is different, but you're noticing I'm feeling more free and more liberated in my expression and feeling more confident and empowered. And that is a very magnetic place to be. That's a very magnetic energy to show up from. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned the sensuality piece because I feel like that's a big piece of what everyone got to experience on the retreat is having a space with all women, which is so beautiful. I find that when we take away any like of the male gaze or we don't even have mirrors around, it's not about what it looks like and it's more about being in this space where you can explore different expressions is so liberating to me. Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing. Okay, so we have one final question for you ladies. What has shifted or opened up for you since leaving the retreat? Morgan.
Yeah, I since returning home from the retreat, I have experienced a significant shift in my business, the way I feel about it. Then the result is I'm making a lot more money, which, after having my business crumble roughly a year before coming to the retreat has been huge for me, because that helps me get out of fight or flight, right? When I feel like I'm fully resourced. So that's been really cool. And yes, the money's great, but the way I feel and the way I move through my workday has shifted as well. I would also say that, I'm a single woman, but I would say that my experience with dating is shifting. I have a lot less sort of attachment to outcomes, and really I'm just sort of like checking in with, like, how does this person make me feel? Like, do I want to spend more time with them? Do I feel inspired? As opposed to, again, being in my head and trying to figure out if they check certain boxes and, like, where's this going, and just sort of like trying to figure it all out ahead of time. And so that's been really interesting, because it's the first time, I would say, in my almost 43 years where I've sort of just felt this non-attachment. And by that, I don't mean being detached from the process, but just like, I'm not clinging to the experience.
I love that. I love that you're getting to experience more flow of abundance, and your experience in your business being out of that fight or flight mode. And you made some really beautiful changes after the retreat that came through for you on the retreat. You were like, okay, I've got clarity on some things I need to shift. You shifted those things, and then now you're experiencing more ease there. And then also beautiful to hear what's opened up for you romantically and how you're relating to the dating process.
Yeah, and thank you for reminding me of the shifts that I got clarity on. And I'll say, like, they were really subtle shifts that are making a huge impact. Like the ripple effect of, like, changing one 5-hour event each week is like expanding into all these different ways into my, my life. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's the energetic shifts, right? Like we can, when we get quiet and have this space to sit and to tune in and connect with that inner clarity, and we follow that intuition energetically, so many things shift and start to fall into place, and there's less resistance that shows up in these different places, because we're not just on autopilot or forcing it the way that we used to, but we're allowing that intuitive wisdom to guide us.
For sure. And that energetic clarity, I really think, I don't want to say it can only come from attending a retreat, but I think that its ability to come through in a space like we were in is so much more easeful and natural, and, like something that when I'm in my home playing taskmaster, right, of all the things that we do as women in our homes, like, it just, there isn't the space for it in that case.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. There is something so powerful about getting out of your home environment, being in a space that is super intentional for healing and growth. So appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
All right. Who else wants to share what has shifted or opened up for you?
I would say that my life looks completely different at this point than it did about 5 months ago or so. After this retreat, I went to Egypt, which was, I had never been that far from the US, and I had never flown. Actually, flying to Costa Rica was the first time I had flown out of the country alone. So then to feel confident with that, and then take that next step in going to Egypt, was a lot. And just in terms of feeling a sense of empowerment, and then even thinking about what's in alignment with me and my life and where I want to be, I knew that Houston was not where I wanted to be anymore. And the job opportunities that had come my way were like, it seemed like something was bound to happen, and then, certain things didn't. But I just gave up my apartment without having an opportunity lined up at the time, because I was like, I'm going to put it out into the universe that I'm going to be where I'm meant to be, even though I don't know what that is exactly. And for like a week and a half, it was a little dark. I'm not gonna lie, but now I'm in Washington, D.C. And sometimes the way things unfold might not be how you expect they will turn out, or when the timing's not always aligned. Usually I want things to happen much quicker, but it all ended up working out. And there's still things that I are sort of a TBD, but I think just that sort of like faith in the universe and faith in myself and knowing that whatever is meant to be, I will not miss out on. That's been such a huge shift for me where it's just like, oh, whatever, romantic connection or career connection. It's like it wasn't meant to be. And then it just kind of lets go of a lot of that worry or whatever else that I used to just dwell on for so long.
Yeah, the word that's coming up is being in that surrendered state, right? And practicing that because it's an ongoing practice. But yeah, really allowing things to flow how they're supposed to. And also, you are leaning into faith, letting go of your apartment without being like, I have something else lined up, but just trusting that inner, knowing that it is all working out and following that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. If I could just add, like at the very beginning when you asked about our intention, like surrender was that my intention for the retreat, where it's like I don't know what will happen, but that's kind of what makes it exciting and like an adventure, and just then it allows things to unfold kind of in a greater way.
Beautiful. Yes. Thank you. Love that. That came full circle for us. Okay, Blanca.
I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was gonna say like another level of surrendering for me, because I was just like, you know what? There's so many things in my life that I'm trying to be in control of, that I just can't. And when I was there, I was like, okay, like I would really question myself, like, oh, okay, Blanca, like, why are you trying to control this? Like knowing you can't. And so it was just like letting go, almost like shedding things that I have no control over that took up a lot of energetic space in me. So it was
Yeah.
just, it was so much more liberating.
hmm Yeah, that releasing and that shedding, which
Yeah.
happened through the emotional
Yeah.
alchemy work that we did.
And
Yeah.
the embodiment, just
Mhm.
I wasn't moving my body as much at the time. And I feel like ever since then, I try to prioritize that, because I'm like, okay, I know how beneficial it is for me to just move my body a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. And that's the other piece that I love about retreats is that there are obviously going to be practices that people are familiar with, and then there's going to be other practices that are either new or that you get to deepen in. And like Morgan said, doing these practices in person in this space with other women is different than doing it at home or, online. So I feel like having that space to explore these different modalities and then see, how can I bring this back into my life? How can I integrate it? And that's a big piece of what I focus on as well, is making sure that the integration process is supported. I see a lot of experiences that people go on and it's like, okay, go out into the world and figure it out. And, we have intentions before leaving the retreat and getting clear on what your intentions are for integration. And then we also have a follow-up call afterwards so that we can all do a check-in and add additional support as well. So that's something that I think is really important, is how do I bring this back into my life after the retreat is done, instead of just having this peak experience that was really cool and then nothing necessarily shifts after that. So you ladies shared that really beautifully. Okay, so that is bringing us to the end of our session. I could talk to you ladies forever. There are so many other memories that came through as we were talking, but I really appreciate everything that you shared and appreciate you using your voices and letting yourself be seen here and offering some insights for our listeners to see what's possible for them. So I'm just sitting here looking at you ladies, radiant, confident, beautiful, feminine beings, also so powerful and creating really cool things in the world. So really celebrating each of you for the ongoing journey that you're on. And I'm so grateful that I get to be a part of that and look forward to however that continues to unfold. And yeah, look forward to continuing the magic together. So thank you ladies so much for
Yeah.
being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite to be on here.